Namaste. Thank you for inviting me, and congratulations to all the organizers of the Warwick India Forum. It's an honor to be here. Topic that I was given is the title of my book, a book I wrote many years ago called Breaking India. So I just actually didn't know that that's my topic until about 20 minutes ago, but that's okay. I think it's a very important topic for those of you who are patriotic, who believe in the future of India, because you should always know what are the threats. You should always know what we face, what we must face with courage, so you're not sort of blind to it, you're not living in a fool's paradise. It's very easy for our people to sort of become escapists, either because the tendency is that, you know, my home is okay, my family is okay, I'm doing well, my kids are gone to the UK and they're doing well, okay, they're in Warwick and so on, why should I worry? And that is the kind of mentality that has let us down. That is how we got invaded, that is how we got colonized, first by the Mughals and then the Europeans, and it took 1,000 years to get rid of that. So we have to think big, think of the big picture. Your Swadharma is more than just trying to, you know, feed yourself and look after yourself. It's also the bigger picture. So as patriots, and I'm glad you started with the Indian national anthem, and you're very proud of your country. As patriots, you should also understand what are the undercurrents that are not so positive that you ought to be aware of. So I'll tell you my story in this. Long ago, well, I've lived in the US for since I was 20. Over the years, I found a whole lot of forces that were not necessarily favorable for India. And my foundation funded projects to examine media bias. We did a report on TV stereotypes about Indians. We funded another project on print media, New York Times and Washington Post biases over many years. So we've done a lot of that, academic biases. But something interesting happened when I was having a lunch at Princeton, where I live, and some people who joined this lunch had just come from India, and one of them said, you know, I was there and we had a good time, and I said, what was your project, why were you there? And he said he's part of this Afro-Dalit project. And I said, what the heck is that? I never heard of that. And he said, oh, it's an amazing project. And he started telling me that this is a project where they're teaching the Dalits of India that they are really the blacks and the non-Dalits are the whites, and the history of American racism is actually the story of India. And this whites oppressing blacks that happens in the United States is also the way to frame the Indian history. And they have come to establish brotherhood among Africans and Dalits, and to teach them that they've all been oppressed by the whites, and the whites are the non-Dalits of India. So it's kind of like a civil war project, trying to create a disruption. I didn't take it seriously first, but he invited me to his office, and he had a huge map of a balkanized India, which is on the cover of my book, Breaking India. And this showed different regions in different colors and all broken up. And so this is how I came up with this Breaking India investigation. He was very proud of this, and he was a decent man. And he didn't know there's anything wrong with it. And no Indian had actually taken him to task. So I thought I could use him to get some information. So I became friends with him. I wanted to find out who funds all this. He gave me information on who funds it. And then I approached all these funding agencies in the US. And I said, you know, you seem to be doing huge projects in India. I'd like to write about them and understand them. And they sent me boxes and boxes of reports and flyers and videos, which were their propaganda kind of stuff. And they thought they're going to get the typical Indian who will be impressed by all that they are bringing human rights to our country, and so we ought to be praising them. So I began a project of studying these people. And soon, my table was not big enough to hold all this material, So I started filling up a bookcase. And when I had filled a couple of bookcases of all this material from many agencies, I thought that this is a huge thing. So I started hiring some interns from Princeton University to come and scan this and build a huge soft copy kind of online database for myself. And we started searching. We started searching and coming up with who funds it, how much money is going, what is the ideology they're exporting to India, how they do training of leaders under the garb of human rights and leadership training. They're giving them, they're brainwashing them and really turning them into kind of a civil war army. And I started plotting where in India on the map these kind of things are happening. So then I decided that I should find out where this money lands and what do they do with it. Because obviously when it lands in India, it lands under the pretext of starting a school or a water project or food or whatever. It comes in the guise of philanthropy. But it's different. Now, no one had done so much research because one of the problems is our people talk a lot, but they are not willing to do so much hard work. I put in years and years, full time, and a lot of money to pursue all this. So then I started hiring people in India, where the money lands. So if a particular church group in Texas has a series of projects in India, I sent my people there to see what exactly goes on. Because it seems that you got to look at both ends. You got to look at what the US side is doing, sending this money, and what the Indian side is doing, and what's going on. You got to connect the dots. People in India can't do this sitting in India. You need somebody in the Western world where the money starts. The money, you got to follow the money trail. And sometimes the money trail is not direct, but indirect. It goes through all sorts of intermediaries along the way and changes its character. So I put a team together in India. Especially I figured I should start with Tamil Nadu because I had some people there and a lot of such stuff is going on. So what I discovered led to this book, Breaking India. And here's what I came up with. The forces, I call them Breaking India forces, are a kind of a collaboration between people based in India and people based in United States, Canada, Britain, European Union. There's parts of many, many countries, you know. The Scandinavian countries have this project. Germany has it. There are lots of countries involved. And I found that these Breaking India forces are well networked. They have annual meetings and more frequent meetings. They go and train their people how to go to India and what to say, what not to say. Many of them know languages. They wear Indian clothes. They really kind of infiltrated. And they have a large army of such people based in India doing work for them. Now, I thought I'll get help from some friends of BJP or RSS people or VHP people in America or some Hindu gurus or at least the Indian embassy, because this is a kind of a subversion, and nobody was interested in helping me. Either they were too busy or, you know, we are doing so great and we won this cricket match recently and we're going to have so much GDP, and they're just not interested. Or it was somebody else's job, or, you know, maybe it wasn't true, or, you know, we deserve it. There were those people who said, we deserve it because we are horrible people, we have this caste problem and we are burning women and we are doing all these kind of bad things. And so, you know, and then some would argue that, you know, we never really were a nation. So if these Breaking India forces are kind of fragmenting us into different identities and different narratives and making them hate each other, then, you know, maybe that's good, because maybe this concept called India is a bad idea. So I saw all of this and it distressed me. And as a one man, for 25 years, I've taken early retirement from all my professional activities and I pursue this kind of work full time. And what I'm describing is one of dozens of projects, different kind of projects. This Breaking India is just one of them. So I started working on this very seriously, and in the end we produced this book. Now, what the book shows is that this Breaking India, the project to show India as not a legitimate state, not unified, is a very old project. It just has a new face, it gets reincarnated and born again in different forms. But this was going on in early times, British times. Many people have come and tried to break up India with the creating divisiveness. The whole Aryan Dravidian divisive theory was born in the 1800s. I mean, if the Dravidians were truly a separate people, being so literate, being so prolific, they would have written about it themselves. They would have written about being oppressed by some North Indians, but nothing in the huge canon and the huge library of Tamil works from thousands of years, nothing is there which complains about these outsiders coming and invading us. And nor is there literature from the north saying that we went and invaded those guys. So this is entirely a new narrative built in the 1800s by British people. Max Miller was a German, but hired by the East India Company. He came up with the Aryan theory, and various British-era missionary types built the Dravidian theory, and they started creating this divisiveness. And then this whole Lord Risley wanted a way to classify Indians. And there was recently something called, recently at that time, Darwin's theory of evolution. Some people had turned it into race science. It was a topic studied all over the Western world. There were departments of race science. And they were classifying based on different parameters in your body and this and that, the different races, and trying to stratify them into who's more evolved and so on, and apply the theory of evolution to human races. So when he went to India, as the head of the Census Bureau, he came up with this brilliant idea that India will be the experiment. That is where there's a large amount of data because there's diversity, and he's going to create this idea of how the diversity of India can be turned into a hierarchy as races, some more evolved than others. So he came up with this structure of castes. That was the first time that somebody had formally introduced this hierarchy of castes. And he writes after the first census that when he goes to the different caste leaders, asking them to count and asking them to define their characteristics, they revolt that they don't belong into this hierarchy. So actually there is proof of resistance from the so-called castes who do not want to be classified that way. Many caste people complained that you got it wrong, we are not like this. But he insisted. It was imposed on them. So every 10 years the census was repeated, and then the amount of resistance went down, and gradually the people of India kind of started accepting it, and they started behaving that that's okay, that's how we are. And stupidly, after independence, the government of India adopted the same structure of Lord Risley in the constitution, and that is the caste system we have. So the caste system is an invention of Lord Risley. Now we have diversity, and we have different communities. They're called jatis, not castes. And we have varna, which is the qualities an individual has, not by inheritance, but by personal aptitude. So some people are more skilled in this way, and some people are skilled in that way, and this is not because you're born a certain way. This fluidity has been there for a very long time. And always there have been abuses, and there has been people who fix those abuses. So India is a long story without any external force bringing human rights to us or anything of that sort, where people have sorted out these problems on their own. And there has been this fluidity. But with the Lord Risley project, it became a British project to divide. It became a formal part of the British system to divide and to come up with, quotas and to treat different castes differently and to make them fight each other, etc. So this, unfortunately, has become a reality in India. So when people ask me, why are you concerned about academic biases? How does it affect me in the real world? I mean, it's amazing we haven't learned our history. I tell them that one of the biggest problems we face is the caste system. That was an academic project starting in Britain, and look where it ended up. And this Aryan-Dravidian divide is a real nuisance in India. There's a whole Dravidianism in the south, and it's an academic project started in England, and look where it ended up. So you see, these are not just isolated ivory tower thinking projects. They have a way of traveling into the real world. So that's what the Breaking India forces are about. The Breaking India forces, based in different countries, have very systematic, ambitious projects for gaining more and more market share in India, in the form of evangelism, in the form of Maoism, some places, Now the ISI from Pakistan has joined the Breaking India forces. They're involved and very active in many parts of India. So you have the three expansionist ideologies all at work in India. You have the Western ideology, which has a sub-part which is Christian and a sub-part which is left-wing human rights kind of an ideology. And then you have Chinese and Maoists in certain regions operating. And then you have the Islamic, the ISI, Islamist kind of people operating. So the three expansionist ideologies, each having a very open public statement to take over the world and to be the dominant worldview, each of them sees India as the large elephant. There's plenty of food for everybody. We can keep eating it for a while. And even though outside India they're fighting each other, they're at war, there is that clash of civilizations going on between, now between China and the West, and between the West and Islam, and so on, that clash is going on. But in India, they're all fighting a common enemy. So they're even collaborating. So this is very interesting. You have collaborations of the extreme right wing in India with the extreme left wing, all working together, targeting the Indian state. And when you look at who funds them, the funding agencies in the West that are extreme right wing and the other funding agencies in the West that are extreme left wing are actually fighting each other in the West. I mean, it's like taking your extreme right wing British people, leaders, and taking the extreme left wing British leaders and finding out that, they're all funding people in India and those people are collaborating. That's so strange. But nobody has pointed this out. And my book points it out. The left-wing Breaking India forces and the right-wing Breaking India forces in their international headquarters are bitter enemies, but for a temporary project of, killing this elephant and feeding off of it, and then having to fight each other also eventually, right now they're okay with collaborating. So this is, I found that governments are involved, foreign governments, the US, Britain, many foreign agencies, CIA and other intelligence agencies. I had to go and study what they're up to. Academic people, a whole lot of people who are into South Asian studies, Indology, these kind of departments are, very aligned with the Breaking India forces. There are church groups involved. There are these foundations that give grants. Many of them are involved. So the network is huge. And nobody in India has really taken this on as a serious problem that we got to fight. That we have to champion. I didn't get any help from anybody. It's a private, project. It's not a project that a religious group in India wanted to help me with, or some political organization was willing to help me with, even though they claim to be patriotic, or the government, or anybody for that matter. In fact, I became unpopular and controversial. So rather than being considered a champion who's out there risking his neck and giving up all he's got, his tan, man, dhan, towards his cause, people are saying, hey, let's shun this guy because he's controversial. So it's like somebody is out there fighting for you, sticking his neck out, and he is the head of this one-man army, and you are privately very happy and feeling very glad that he's out there to protect you, but publicly you're too afraid to say that, hey, listen, we are behind this guy. So that's a shame for our country. A lot of people actually attacked me. Some people in Oxford wrote an email saying this guy is a dangerous guy to bring because he wrote this book, Breaking India. They cited my book. They actually cited my book. And they said he's dangerous because he claims, he accuses us. He was one of the Breaking India people. He accuses people like us that we are out there to break India. We are actually out there to do human rights work in India. So this business of bringing human rights is a nice camouflage. So I remind them, there would have been no America without Columbus and he was looking to find a route to India. He was not trying to go to India to bring human rights. He was going there because India was a very wealthy country. And the Ottomans had blockaded the routes, the land routes to Europe. So Indian goods were not able to reach Europe. That's like OPEC's, oil embargo. This is the medieval era version of the OPEC oil embargo. The Ottomans had captured the land routes from Asia to Europe, and Europeans were hungry for Indian goods and Chinese goods. These were the most prized goods at that time. There's a lot written about it in European chronicles. And there was a huge trade. India was a very wealthy country because it had a massive export economy, textiles, steel, medicines, all of that, agriculture products. And the only thing India would accept, because what the Europeans had, nobody in India needed any of their goods because they didn't have anything worthwhile at that time. This is before the Industrial Revolution. The only thing India would accept is gold. So the huge amount of world gold ended up in India. And that's how using gold as the reserve currency starts, with India demanding gold payments. So when you look at the history of how this gold standard starts, it's actually Indian traders, a huge part of the world economy, demanding gold payments. So this was the India at that time. And since the goods got blockaded by the Ottomans, they wanted to find sea routes. So they sent Columbus in one direction and Vasco da Gama in the other direction. That begins a whole new chapter of history, and the rise of Europe happens as a result of that. I told them in the British Parliament that you should remember your history. And the history of the greatness of your empire and all that doesn't start with some brilliant European guys sitting one day having a shower or sitting in their bathtub and having this big breakthrough idea. It's not like that. Even Newton's ideas borrowed very heavily from Indian mathematics. And the Industrial Revolution borrowed very heavily from India's textile, which was a very big global economy for India, and India's steel. These two were the first successful products in the British Industrial Revolution. And you cannot ignore the Indian influence and what they took from India to make these two industries in Britain. So the whole history of the world has to be rewritten. Unfortunately, our own people, I call them sepoys, because they're working for the empire, not like the original sepoys fighting, like the ones who fought in Jallianwala Bagh under General Dyer, firing bullets at their fellow Indians. Today's sepoys are intellectual sepoys. They're sitting in American universities, British universities, in these humanities and liberal arts departments. I'm very glad that many of you are tech people, because you're spared the brainwashing. And people who come for engineering, medicine, business, at least you are learning things that are more practical and useful and not as biased. Whereas the fellows who studying history and religion and anthropology and political thought and social sciences are filled with these kind of Western-centric, Eurocentric theories, which is a very kind of a racist lens to look at other people. I wanted a debate with Lord Meghnad Desai, who's invited here for a talk later, because he's made some statements supporting what I would call the Breaking India forces. He's made some statements, and I would like to have a clarification, but I'm told he was not available or whatever for a debate. But he's made some statements that India is not really a nation, it's a lot of little pieces. He's made this statement in India, and he's made this statement here, and I'd like some clarification from him rather than second-hand sources, because I don't believe in putting somebody on the spot based on hearsay. I'm often accused of things that are not even true, that I haven't even said, but it's all hearsay. And so I wouldn't do that to someone else. I would like to just ask him straight on camera, point blank, do you feel that India has had a unified history for a long time? See, it's a very common popular theory that Indians unfortunately have bought into, that India was never a nation, a unified nation, until the British made one. But this is all humbug, because you look at the Western idea of a nation state, is a different kind of a concept of what constitutes a nation. But if you look at India, I mean, we have, if you look at Ramayana, Ramayana talks about journeys from the northernmost area to the southernmost area, all the way to Lanka, and all the villages. It describes villages and rivers and mountains and forests along the way. And this is a grand narrative of the Indian geography as a very unified landscape. And the people who respect the Ramayana all over India, they see themselves as part of this unified nation, unified geography. Certainly there is a unity of geography. Certainly the people of the south understand the value of the Ganga and what it means to them. Certainly people in the north know Rameshwaram in the southern tip. Certainly Adi Shankara went to the four corners of India to set up the four Pitams. So there was a sense of unity. That's why he went around. Certainly the Kumbh Mela attracts people for thousands of years from all corners of India who need to go there for a certain reason at a certain time, astrologically. So the sense that we are a unified people has been there for a long time in our pilgrimages, in our rituals, in our stories, etc. And this unity also encourages a lot of diversity. So we didn't conquer and invade each other and impose my language on you and this sort of thing. And so therefore we've remained a diverse people, but that doesn't mean we're not a common nation. So I really wanted to have this debate on, are we a unified people or not? Do we owe this as a gratitude to British that they gave us this sense of nation? And maybe one day I'll have this opportunity. I thought this was going to be my lucky day. So we have started a project called Swadeshi Indology. Swadeshi means indigenous Indian point of view. Indology is the study of India. The Videshi Indology, which is the Western view, is where Indology was started in Britain, right a couple hours from here in Oxford, Sir William Jones and various other people, to study India through their perspective. The Germans were involved, the French were involved, and we are reversing the gaze. We are looking at Indology through the Indian lens. That's our point of view. So the job at hand is to reimagine India through our own lens, not through the Breaking India lens. And this is a very long-term project. This will take a very long time. And I can do so much. I can basically do my best, leave you some text, leave you some research, leave you some intellectual Kshatriyas I'm training. And then after a while, it's your turn. I'll move on, and you guys have to take over and do what you want to do with it. So that's my message today. Thank you for coming and listening. Namaste.